overview of my presentation. That's why I gave you guys the agenda. So first, I'm going to define what displacement is, and then explain. Sorry, I didn't give you explain key terms, and then effects of displacement. Then we're going to do a quick Kahoot, and then I'm going to leave you guys with like a map of displacement in SF. I also put like a space there for handwritten notes if you feel like it, and there's also a map in the back of the agenda. So, hello? Hello?
Wow.
Hello? Okay, so displacement. Okay, so displacement is when people are forced out of their homes and their neighborhoods due to different reasons, which I will get into soon. And actually, wait, I'll do that right now. Ways of displacement, one way is through evictions, which is our first key term. An eviction is when a landlord removes a tenant from the property. And for example, one way this could happen is, for example, if you don't pay your bills, you could get evicted because the property owner or the landlord obviously wants you to pay them. So if you don't, they can take legal action and kick you out. So that's what an eviction is. But then this also leads us to our second key term, which I'll give you guys a moment to look at this if you guys want. Our next key, you guys good? You guys good?
Who is being knocked out of the window?
Taylor Swift.
That was in her
Poor girl.
what music video? Bad Blood music video.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
She got food.
Our next key term, which is buyouts. A buyout is an offer to vacate the property with money as a compensation. So landlords can't just kick you out on a whim and be like, bye, go away. So buyouts happen. So landlord, they offer you money, and then they want to sell your property. Usually this happens when they want to sell the property you're living on. And because if you kind of think about it, if you're a prospective buyer, you want of the property, you want to buy a piece of property that has less tenants, because then you're more flexible onto what you want to change it to. Like you could change it into like cafe or something, or like anything. So basically the landlord will pay out people so that there's less tenants in the property, and then they'll in turn get more money when someone buys the property because, you know, you get that? Does that make sense? Was that clear? Because I know I'm kind of talking. Does that make sense? We're good? Okay. So, yeah, and then, so yeah, you're doing that. That's very clear. Great. I thought that would be confusing. Another way that someone can be displaced is through demolition, and this can be like when the building is getting torn down. Sorry, because this can usually mean because like there's safety issues in the building, so it's being torn down, or like someone bought the building. But then this could also, demolition can also be like natural disasters, like fires, like that cause the building to burn down. So then someone who was living in that building obviously is displaced because then they have to look for a new housing situation. Another way is rent increase. Rent increases cause displacement because if a family can't afford the rising rent prices, they end up having to leave the neighborhood for like a cheaper option. And this kind of leads us to our third key term, which are rent increase laws. Rent increase laws are a set of laws that limit how much a landlord can increase a tenant's rent. And this limit is decided by the Board of San Francisco Rent Control, and they determine the increase limit prices every year. another law, which is our fourth key term, is a California state law that is called the Ellis Act. It's a California state law that allows landlords to evict tenants to go out of business, and I put out of business in quotations because usually when landlords use this, they're changing the use of the building from an apartment into a condominium. And obviously, if you're changing it from apartment to a condominium, condominiums are more expensive, so there's a rent increase, and that causes displacement. But it's also, this act allows the landlord to evict tenants because they're changing it, and then, so that causes displacement as well. Yeah. So technically they're going out of the business of being an apartment and going into the business of becoming a condominium. Allegedly. Sorry. Okay, and another way is foreclosure. Like we learned in the presentation on mortgages, we know what a foreclosure is. It's when you don't pay your mortgage, and so then the bank takes away your home, which causes displacement because you don't have a home anymore because the bank took it away. The last way is a negligent landlord. Negligent landlords are often a result of situations where the landlord wants to evict you, but they don't have a reason to, but they also don't want to compensate you through a buyout. So like they ignore like requests for like basic needs like running water or like having maintenance on the property and doing repairs. So basically making living conditions so bad that you don't want to live there anymore. So yeah, that's what happens. So displacement has like effects on the community, but it mostly affects people of low income and people of color, like Latino or African American communities. We see that really here in the Bay Area, like in the Mission District. I kind of use that as an example in this. So often areas being gentrified are neighborhoods of color because, like we said before, because the property in the area is often cheaper, since most neighborhoods of color are often seen as undesirable and the property is cheap, which kind of goes into the whole idea with redlining and stuff. And then, so the realtors see this as an investment, and they put more like cafes, books, little bookstores, those little herb shops on the Mission. They put more of those because that will cater to a more expensive group of people, basically white people. And so this kind of caused worry for a lot of people in SF because it comes to question with like the homework you guys watched in the video, like is this placement ripping out culture in SF? Because we're so culturally diverse, and if by taking the underlying thing is that these Latino families are being displaced and moving out of these neighborhoods, which is kind of in turn ripping out their culture from those areas because they have to leave and find cheaper situations. And obviously the whole Bay Area is really expensive right now, so they're gonna leave the Bay Area and go somewhere else, like Idaho, for like cheaper housing, which kind of, that's the big picture of like how this affects the Bay Area. And then also, like I said, it affects low-income families, and these low-income families, if you really look at it, they often move to worse neighborhoods with high crime, bad schools, and like fewer resources, because that's where it's cheaper to live. And it affects the whole family, but especially affects kids because they're moving to these bad neighborhoods with high crime where it's dangerous, they can't even play outside, and with bad schools, so they're not learning enough, and they're also having, since the schools have fewer resources, they're also not getting that great of an education, so it all kind of ties together with like how you're raised and like stuff like that. Okay, so Kahoot time.
Yes.
Super
Oh.
fun. There's my code. I just wanted to show you guys.
Yes.
Ah, sorry.
Kahooted.
Oh wait, I should probably do Come.
Yes, we love the music. I want to get my diploma to that song.
Can we do that?
Just have it playing.
Pretty sure it's on.
Wait for like 3 hours straight.
Yes.
I'm really hoping it's not too
Guess not. Wait, where's the
loud. Oh yeah.
The question is, can you imagine Boris speaking to that music?
Yeah, happy he's doing that.
Yeah.
Same. He's the king.
What? Cool. There's a few more people. Callers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. Okay,
Who's pale?
Me. Is everyone? Is
You're
everyone
a
on
big
it?
dog.
Yeah.
Everyone's on it?
Yeah.
Mine's
Okay.
like still connecting.
I'm gonna start now.
Okay.
Oh, go off.
I love Kahoot.
School baby.
Fun.
That's how it is.
Wow.
That group's like, Colin, can you move your head a little bit?
Which
You're
way?
in the way.
Down. There's multiple answers.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. There's multiple triggers. Ooh, yay.
Super fun. Everyone got it right.
Second place, baby.
Wow. Here's first.
You can get it fixed because your pet like destroyed your house.
Yeah.
Dude. No, I just couldn't see. I saw that. Behind Colin.
Wait,
Colin.
someone
I see.
fun.
Alex, watch back.
Oh, I wrote your name
I'm coming.
Yeah, I could do that. Wait, who?
Bruh, I was in first place. What?
I'm coming.
I'm sorry, my name.
Placement is bad.
Exactly.
I can't see any. There.
I had to make things. Yay!
Some rapper needs to use Kahoot.
I'm just 1 point behind you.
Neat.
A singular.
I got all of them right, but how have I?
We'll get way, way too intense in this game.
Because you're not fast enough.
I didn't even read it.
It's a little hard.
Secret classroom superpowers? American culture.
White American culture. White American culture.
52 points, baby.
No.
Wow.
Alex Martin.
No.
I could be in first.
Okay, last one. Go away.
Fourth place. 60 points behind you, baby.
Somebody
Watch
clicked
it.
the other one, I would have been concerned. Okay.
I lost it at the very last moment. That was so sad. Top 5. Classy.
This goes into like 5th place.
Thank you. Thank you.
Fun.
Recognition.
Okay. Last thing, I just wanted to show a quick map of like displacement in SF. So the lower income areas are the ones in purple, and if it's dark, Kahoot is making some noises.
Love to see.
Is the dark purple ones are the ongoing gentrification and displacement in lower income neighborhoods, and the really bright like orange and there's only one red one are ongoing exclusion and displacement in high income neighborhoods. So yeah, and that's also in the agenda. So if you want to keep that as a resource, it's there. And yeah, sources. Thank you. Yay.
So, can I have a question? Just like the, I don't disagree with anything you said, So this is not a dig. This is something for us to like think through just a little bit harder. The example of the mission is a good one. So there is this concern that gentrification is pushing people out of the mission, which would then also completely agree with you. That would take away some of the Hispanic culture that's there, right? Which is real, and the same Hispanic people that are there were there because before them there were some white collar Irish people who were displaced, right? And so my question is, should this sort of gentrification eviction cycle be seen in the context of sort of a never-ending, there will always be one group that's going to evict another group that's coming in? And is that sort of inevitable? Or like, should we be, we're concerned about the Hispanic the Hispanic culture being eradicated from the mission. Should we be concerned that there was Irish culture eradicated before that from the same neighborhood? It was it was definitely blue collar Irish culture, like it was a low income neighborhood to start with, right? They had an option to move out in the suburbs in the 1960s because of white flight, which is why the Hispanic culture, the Hispanic people were able to move in the first place. So I'm just asking, like, how many cycles back do we need to go before we're concerned about people being moved out?
Which is like when I was reading the articles, even like from like personal experience, like if you think of another place is like near the Tenderloin area, that used to be the Soma, that used to be the Filipino like area, and now they're moved out to like Daly City. So it's kind of like this big cycle that keeps happening, and like I feel like there's too much people, so many people are just saying it's a cycle, we can't stop the cycle, it keeps going. I feel like there needs to be they need to look into it differently and into a different solution on how to change that. They should stop thinking, oh, it's a never ending cycle, I can't do anything about it. You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of the articles I was reading about it, they were like, it's a never ending cycle, you can't change that because another group is going to come in and do that. I feel like they should change their look and perspective on it and make it into like, instead of, I can't change that, I need to make a solution for that so that doesn't happen to other groups of people. So that's kind of my thing.
Okay.
Super cool. Yay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Love that.